remains the same. Now, Lillian has fallen for a classic Democratic or liberal ploy, and that is this, Lillian. You intervene, you have government intervention, and you can look at housing, you can look at energy, you can certainly look at health care. You intervene in the market just enough to screw it up, then you blame the free market. You got that? I mean, take a look at housing. What has happened in housing? We had Barney Frank's affordable housing slush fund funneled through Freddie and Fannie. Freddie and Fannie screwed up the market. You got to give a little of that credit to the Federal Reserve by expanding credit for housing too much, a negative federal funds rate, and all of that. Though Greenspan denied that in the Journal the other day and said, no, it was foreign savings coming into the United States that made all the housing, or created the housing bubble. But I digress. The point is, Freddie and Fannie nationalized housing. Freddie and Fannie created an asset bubble by effectively, thanks to Barney Frank, telling mortgage brokers and lenders to make bad loans. And they called it affordable housing. And there were requirements. When you had Andrew Cuomo at HUD, he raised the number of affordable housing goals, if you will, that Freddie and Fannie had to finance or cover. Time and time again. Now, when you essentially tell the market that they can't engage in their very own discipline, i.e., what's your credit score, or this or that, and tell them they have to make bad loans, and then turn around and tell them, but when you do, don't worry, we'll take those loans in the secondary market, as Freddie and Fannie did, you're setting yourself up for A, an asset bubble, B, a collapse, and C, a bailout of Freddie and Fannie. Now, of course, the apologists of this denied it. Barney Frank in 2003 on Freddie and Fannie. The more people, in my judgment, exaggerate a threat of safety and soundness of Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, the more people conjure up the possibility of serious financial losses to the Treasury, which I do not see. I think we see entities that are fundamentally sound financially and will withstand some of the disastrous scenarios. And even if there were a problem, the federal government doesn't bail them out. The more pressure there is there, then the less I think we see in terms of affordable housing. Close quote. Mr. Frank's baby turned out to be a $300 billion bailout. Barney lied, but he got in the market enough to screw it up. And then that allowed Barney and Chris Dodd, who also was an apologist for Freddie and Fannie because his buddies at Countrywide were shoving off their bad mortgages to Freddie and Fannie. And then Dodd got a sweetheart deal from Countrywide. All of that allowed the market to create a malinvestment in housing that it otherwise, left to its own devices, never would have. And now these are the same guys that are saying it's the free market. That's what happens when you rely on free market capitalism. Well, tell me, Barney, what about the affordable housing goals at HUD is free market? What about Freddie and Fannie, government-sponsored enterprises, is free market? What about the credit expansion by the monetary authorities is free market? All of those are government entities, sir. So get it straight and quit lying. But that's not going to stop the mainstream media from keeping the mantra going. It's the market. It's the market. Well, I'll tell you something, Lillian. The same is true for health care. We haven't had a free market in health care since wage and price controls of 1945. We don't even have a tax code that's level for health care. When we were told during World War II you couldn't give somebody a raise, price controls on salaries, which ironically Barney Frank and Andrew Cuomo now want to institute for the financial sector, price controls, salary caps. When we were told that in the World War II era, well, businesses said, well, if I can't give people a raise and I can't get the good talent I want, I guess I'll give them health care. And they did. And that's how employer-provided health care came about. Then we changed the tax code so only business could deduct the premiums and you and I couldn't as single payers. Well, all of a sudden we don't have portability. We've got either government health care or employer health care. And the prices go through the roof because nobody's really paying the full tab. All you want to do if you want to free up health care, Lillian, is change the tax code, tell the state legislators to quit adding on all these silly mandates that health insurers have to cover acupuncture and substance abuse and mental disease and anything that moves, that jacks up the price for young people that don't need it. Again, government regulations, government mandates, a government tax code, a government price control is what screwed up health care. Now, if you think that doctors and providers are padding the bills on Medicare and Medicaid, I got to set you straight on that, my dear. Government programs like those two, Medicare and Medicaid, now account for 46% of all healthcare spending in the United States. Almost half of everything we spend on healthcare is paid for by the government. You think the government can afford that? No. The cost shifting takes place because the government reimbursement rates, Lillian, far from above the market, are deliberately set below the market, roughly anywhere from 20 to 40% lower than private providers, according to Sally Pipes, the author of the Top 10 Myths of American Healthcare. Of course it's that way. They couldn't overpay. The budget would go bonkers. Why do you think they want to renegotiate Medicare Part D drug prices? That's a euphemism for price controls. Let me warn you people about this. If you think it's bad going into the doctor and having to pay this bill or that bill, at least you've got health care access. Here's what's going to happen when the government takes over health care. They will simply say, well, we need health care for this person and this person and this person, but we can't afford another MRI. We can't afford another old person to have another operation. They've had a good life. We'll just deny a few of these. And that way, we'll save our global budget, and we can provide other health care to others. They will ration as sure as the day is long. It's already in the works. It has to happen because when something is free, there is unlimited demand. And the only way to get a hold of that demand is to deny coverage. Make you feel better? Mystic, Connecticut. Greg, you are on the Rush Limbaugh program with Jason Lewis. Hi.
It's a pleasure to speak with you, Jason, and I certainly respect your views on capitalism and freedom, which is one of the books that I read by Milton Friedman. I want to know what you think about the concept of the mechanism of the Federal Reserve and the fact that our money is no longer tied to gold as being the underlying, enabler of all this insanity that we're going through right now. I believe if money were made real again, that a lot of the extremes on both sides, on the liberal side of programs that we can't afford, we'd have to figure out how do we afford to do this. I also believe on the right that maybe some of the wars that we get into, if they were made, real as far as the money is concerned, and not have the Federal Reserve, which is not part of our government, printing the money that's not connected to anything of value, being the thing that we really need to fix. And I really appreciate your take on that.
Usually when you get into monetary policy on a talk radio program, the eyes start to glaze over, but it does have to be addressed because when the government creates money out of thin air, fiat money, it usually goes to the financial community. That's how we expand credit in this country, through the banking system, through the financial centers. And so they get the money first. Then the money filters through, and that's why they profit many times when they get the money first. And effectively, they have more credit than they had before. A banker goes to his office, he loans out all the money he has available to loan by noon, he's done for the day. But when the Fed keeps pumping money into the system with a negative federal funds rate, with lowering the discount rate, you name it, they've got these mechanisms to get money into the system to expand credit. Well, he shows up in the afternoon and he's still got more money to loan out. So he loans out even more. And he loans them out at lower interest rates. And he gives them to people who probably shouldn't get a loan. The fundamental problem with monetary policy, and a lot of good people I know, certainly Milton Friedman was a monetarist, and he wasn't a fan of the gold standard, but a lot of good people I know are a fan of the gold standard. I'm not going to take sides. I will say this. The fundamental problem, however, is discipline. The gold standard provides discipline. Because if the government starts to inflate, people turn in their paper money for gold. And that naturally reduces the inflation rate because the money's out of circulation. That's the salient point there. But you could have the same effect if you had discipline at the Fed. If, in fact, the Fed doesn't print money to fund the government. If you had a Federal Reserve that said, no, we're going to allow interest rates to go up, as they should have after this housing bubble, we're going to be tough. Like Reagan did in 1981 and 1982, when the Fed clamped down, wrung inflation out of the economy, the system worked pretty good. It can work well. The problem is There is no political will. We turn these Federal Reserve Board governors into politicians, and they acquiesce. They don't raise interest rates to kill off a recovery.